You know, you hear with protests out on the street, right? This is what democracy looks like, no matter who wins this last Senate race in Georgia. We are really seeing Americans exercise their constitutional rights the way they are supposed to do it. They voted, and they voted in mass numbers, but in just hours, though, we're going to see lawmakers try to mock the Constitution at the moment where the nation is supposed to come together. So let's bring in Angela Rye, Alice Stewart, and Ryan Lizza. So listen, we have already called the Warnock race. Let's talk about the Ossoff Purdue race, okay? Alice, I want to ask you about this. John Ossoff is ahead, 16,370 votes. The 19,000 votes that were out in DeKalb have been counted, putting him ahead by 16,000. He is almost to the point where Purdue cannot even ask for a recount if it does indeed if the numbers hold up. I want to put up the statement, and I just want to get your response to what's going on right now. He says, this is from the Purdue campaign. We will mobilize every available resource and exhaust every legal recourse to ensure all legally cast ballots are properly counted. We believe in the end, Senator Purdue will be victorious. You know, we talked about this last time you were on, and you talked about, listen, this was a free and fair election. What do you make of that? Do you think Purdue is going down possibly the same road that we have been going down since November 3rd in this country?
I have every reason in the world to believe that he's going to challenge it, regardless of how close the margins are, because he's certainly playing from the Trump playbook. And I think that's unfortunate. As I said, I believe the election on November 3rd was free and fair, and the one this week was free and fair. Having been former Deputy Secretary of State in Arkansas, I think states across the country take a lot of pride in making sure that every legal and legitimate vote is counted and people have confidence in the election process. And I spoke with Secretary Raffensperger on Monday about the races in Georgia, and he has confidence in the results that came out in November, and he also had all the ducks in a row and all the elections officials across the state of Georgia ready for this election. And I think it's really discouraging for voters when they go and they take the time to go vote, and they're being told that not only is there irregularities before they vote, but now it's going to be challenged. And look, this has been tough. I wish the results were different. I would love to see 2 Republicans win the state of Georgia and go on to Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, it looks like the voters of Georgia feel differently. Democrats were more energized and more mobilized. And when you have Republicans that are really supportive of this president, and you have Republicans that are looking for incentive to come out and vote, and they are disincentivized by this president, it tends to have consequences.
Let's talk about what's going to happen later today, Ryan Lizza, because you're going to have senators objecting to the Electoral College count, Cruz, Hawley, Johnson, Langford, and so on and so forth. What do you think, and if we can put up that, what Chris has been calling the wall of shame, and I think aptly so he has named it that. You look at all of these folks on here who are expected to object, the Republicans voting against counting electoral votes. What does this mean for our democracy, Ryan?
Well, it's terrible for our democracy that this many Republicans would follow Trump down this path when they know better. They allowed the president to create an alternate reality that his supporters believe, and then they were forced to respond to that alternate reality, alleged election fraud that didn't happen. And instead of fighting those facts and pointing out it's not true, they basically decided to say, well, the voters believe this, there's got to be something there, you know, we're going to do something about it because our voters are pressuring us to. But I think the results yesterday and what might be the result in the Ossoff race has really taken the air out of this idiocy. And already you are seeing Republicans pointing a finger at President Trump and saying that he's the cause of what happened in Georgia. And I think these results just completely changed the dynamic in the Republican Party, making Trump look like some kind of, electoral genius to the opposite. Don, if I could just read a couple of quotes from a story that's moving in Politico like a half hour ago. These are Republicans talking about the results of this election. Trump, this is one Republican, Trump is the cause of this, lock, stock, and barrel. Another Republican, turns out if the leader of a party spends 2 months actively delegitimizing elections and saying voting doesn't matter, voters listen. This was one decisive factor in Georgia, and this was the decisive factor in Georgia, and anyone who says otherwise is probably sharing substances with Lynn Wood. That's the kind of stuff right now that is coming out of the Republican Party in the wake of this loss. And so I think that just takes the air out of what's going to happen later today, and is going to be even more embarrassing than it already was to a lot of Republicans who are going to get up and object.
Let me guess, Angela, you're going to say that completely downplays the role that all of the people who fought to win this election, Democrats, I was reading your mind, Democrats in Georgia fought to win this election by saying that it was the president's fault that they lost. It was maybe the Democrats' fault that their own party won. But how much of an impact do you think Donald Trump, his terrible behavior, had to do with this, with their loss?
Well, I think that here is the real unfortunate reality. It is to quote what former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid once said about Donald Trump. He is the Republican Party's Frankenstein. I am not going to take the onus off of the Republican Party for the monster they built and created. To Alice's point, that she wishes the results were different. Let me tell you who the results could have been. KK Kelly, who is Kelly Loeffler, who adamantly opposed Black Lives Matter and who said they threatened to destroy the United States. That is the alternative. It is David Perdue. Those are the two candidates who John Ossoff in our interview said were Bonnie and Clyde. Right? These are people who have almost engaged in criminal and certainly unethical behavior in the United States Senate. So let's not put all the responsibility at the feet of Donald Trump. Let's instead put the responsibility at the feet of the people who worked diligently to suppress voters and then wanted to call John Lewis the conscience of the Congress and the conscience of the country when he died, but still won't pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Let's not take the responsibility away from the people who still have the power and the votes to do the right thing in the United States Senate, whether we're talking about voting rights, whether we were talking about election security before the November election, or whether we're talking about COVID relief, real relief so people can live and they're not losing their homes and their livelihoods right now. Let's not really make this create this rosy, pretty picture of what's really going on. Donald Trump is the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is Donald Trump.
A point of clarification.
And yes, shout out to every Black person. Go ahead.
Go ahead, finish your thought, and then I'll ask you a question. Shout out to every Black person.
Shout out to every Black person who made this happen in spite of the Democratic Party, who has a lot of work to do as well. But yes, this is a time to celebrate. I certainly believe John will pull it off. He stands on the shoulders of John Lewis and so many others who fought for him and others in this. Go ahead, Don.
Before we run out of time, I just want a point of clarification. You're not saying that Kelly Loeffler is a member of the Klan because you call her KK Kelly.
Oh, I'm saying she campaigned, just like John said, she campaigned with a Ku Klux Klan member. David Perdue was caught throwing up.
She said that she wasn't. She said that she took a picture with someone and she didn't know who he was. And as soon as she found out.
I don't care what she said. I don't care what she said. She acted like a KKK member, Don, when she shamed the Black Lives Matter movement and used those toxic talking points, causing my friends to get death threats. So I'm not going to give her a pass for that. We can.
I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you what she said.
That's their party.
I'm just telling you what she and her campaign said. That's it.
She can say whatever she wants to. She will always be KK Kelly to me, and she lost her job. She lost her job.
Yeah. She's not going to be a senator anymore. Go on. What did you want to say, Alice?
I think it's irresponsible to paint her in that way, and granted, you're certainly free to do so.
No, it's irresponsible to say you want other people in the Senate when they
turned that down. She has refuted that,
and that's absolutely. Go ahead, Alice.
That's absolutely not the case. And let me just say this: you talk about suppressing the vote in Georgia. Look at all the elected officials in Georgia that ran this election. They're all Republicans, from the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state on down. Republicans made sure that Georgia had free and fair elections 2 months ago and this week. So you can, if you want to point blame at where there are election problems, there are certainly there certainly are not any in the state of Georgia. And I think it's really important to make sure that instead of looking at what went wrong in this election, we need to take a look at what actually went right. And the voters have spoken.
Then look at the
facts. It was a free and fair election, and that's important. That's the takeaway.
Angela, go ahead, please.
No, but the takeaway needs to be rooted in fact, and the fact is that there were voters purged, and they have been purged since 2018. Look at the results. Stacey Abrams should be your governor in Georgia, which is your home state, as you once said. And I would also say that I actually went back to 2010 when Republicans in state legislatures all across the country worked to not only suppress votes through cutting back early voting, making it harder to vote absentee, and then instilling voter ID laws. You know that voter ID is on the books in Georgia, so certainly know that suppressive tactics are on the books, but black people showed up in spite of them. That was
Ryan,
my point.
I think it's fair to say that Republicans are going to be grappling with the legacy of Trump for quite a while.
Oh, quite a while. And I just think that a lot of the hot takes from November, when Republicans did exceed expectations in the House races and in Senate races, and some of the polling in places like Texas was just way off, and a lot of other places where Trump did better than he was supposed to do, according to the polls. I think a lot of those takes will be rethought in the light of the fact, that now he may have lost the Senate for his party. There's not a lot to point to from the Trump presidency as he finishes these final days. There's not that much to point to where the kind of Trump wing of the party can say, yeah, that worked out really well for us. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of an exclamation point on that. Big caveat, obviously, is his hold over the Republican Party and its voters remains, ironclad.
Well,
and,
Thank you all. Certainly a lively discussion, especially at 4:30 in the morning. I appreciate it. Good morning. Good morning, everybody.